the face of the program was me because I was interested in doing it and nobody else was. I don't know what it was like for Scott. What about you,
Yeah.
Scott?
Same thing. I mean, you have to have someone in the forefront and someone that has been involved with this, has the experience level. Again, everyone's going to start somewhere. I think for that person that's going to be your lead person, be humble enough to accept a lot of networking and referrals, and based on people that have been through and are building teams, just your networking. That person has to be very good at interacting with folks, because the bottom line is you're trying to build something for your team. I think that, when we talk about building the team, again, everything starts from ground zero. But when there's a need, and we're all seeing the need, you got to get something developed. So
Yeah, and you have to think about what the character of the person is that's going into doing. Just because they want to be, they're interested in, it might not be enough. They have to have a good reputation across the job for people to reach out to as well. And what's their time commitment? Are they available to invest time in developing a program, to meet clinicians, and to map that program out? So you're going to you take those things into consideration.
yeah, I think, Scott, if you can go back to that for just a second, those three bottom things at that slide, when you talk about your time investment, building the program, huge time involvement, developing your resource, that as well, and educating your team members. Those are three topics that are going to be very time consuming. So it's very involved, and whoever that person is has to understand that commitment.
And they also have to recognize that they can't do it alone. You'll reach burnout way too fast. You really need to be the leader of a team. So finding your teammates on your peer support team is going to be imperative, and we'll talk about that a little bit further into the presentation. So after you decide who your leader of the team is going to be, you guys have to decide as an organization or a team itself, how do you want to work? Are you going to be department based? Is it going to be a local union? Is it going to be a state association? Is it going to be regional based, fire district? There's you have to decide who you're going to interact and how big the program is going to be.
Yeah, when we talk about building the program, again, if it's your department that is going to support and get it started, that's great. If it's the local, but optimally, your best bang for the whole program and your department and your members is when you're a unified front. If management and labor can come together and show that this is really for the members and show a united front, that's where you're going to get your most buy-in. It's really important to kind of look and have those two entities kind of combine and be moving everything forward. It's a collaborative effort.
And for our volunteer departments that are out there that are sitting in the presentation, depending on the size of your volunteer department, you may want to consolidate with surrounding volunteer departments to create a peer program so that you have the resources as well. When we designed the program, for us, it was a local union-based program. We had a faceless EAP that was non-existent in the department. It's just a 1-800 number that nobody would use. And the union, after everything that we were going through with the station nightclub fire and several other issues within the department, decided we need to take care of each other. So we took a union-based approach where we have a collective bargaining agreement that defines the peer support program as union run. So it really depends on what the needs of the department are in your organization. And when we talk about working in conjunction with the existing peer teams, like, is there a CISM team that's available to you? Is there a chaplaincy program that's out there? Relief associations, family support groups? It's great to build off of those programs and collaborate with them. Just like Scott was saying earlier, your best bang for your buck is working cohesively with the surrounding resources. But you also have to be careful with taking on or adding those teams to your team, because you have to worry about what's their reputation, What's their budget? Are we infringing on their budget? I was working with a West Coast group of firefighters that were looking to start their program again after it went south because of a confidentiality issue. And when I was talking to them about who's on their team, they were mentioning that, well, it's a lot of the same people that were on the team originally because they were the ones that were trained. Well, you're still going to have the confidentiality problem as an issue for buy-in from the local or from the department. So what if you decide to work with your chaplaincy program, what's the reputation of that group for you? The Relief Association, family support groups. Right now I have an issue with a family support group that we work collaboratively with because there's a member on the job that's having going through a very nasty divorce, and the wives in the group are supporting the wife of the firefighter in social media, which is causing a problem with the firefighter and fellow brothers on the job with their spouses. So so you take on the responsibility of those groups that you partner with, or you can. So you have to be very careful with that.
Yeah. I'll just say something to that slide, that it's just a conference that I came back from last week. I was very impressed. I was up at Nevada's Peer Support Network conference. They had a very large group together and very involved. They've grown tremendously in the couple of years since I was able to go up and provide a class on peer support. And it was really inspiring to see, the folks there that have taken this to another level and really working around their folks to provide that support and that networking. It was pretty awesome. So.
Once you decided what the program is going to be designed around, you need to sit down and decide what your program is going to do. And really to do that, you need to have some type of mission statement so that you can guide, not only as the leader, what you want, but if you ever turn the program over to somebody else, that transition is going to guide the next group as well in the mission of that peer support team. So you want to define your peer support program. You want to create goals. You want to have documentation of how the program is going to run, how we're going to educate our peer team members, and even how we're going to discipline our peer team members. If there's a breach of confidentiality, is that going to be an automatic dismissal from the team, or is there going to be re-education? So it's important to have that document of your program so that there's consistency, because without consistency, you're going to lose buy-in from your members too. Is Scott doing one thing and Scott Ross is doing another thing, but they're on the same team. So if we have a document that is what our mission and goals are going to be and guidance on how we run our teams, then we'll both be under the same on the same wavelength.
Yeah. I think there's something here to pick up. I feel is such an important piece of this. When you are selecting peers, you're building a team, just going back through the things that we learned through the years, that the selection of your peers is such a critical aspect of this because of the confidentiality. It's been said before, I'm going to say it again, it only takes one person to sink your entire team when you break that confidentiality. So it's not just everyone, who wants to be on the peer team. It has to be selected. Who is that person? Who is that person people can trust, as well as who can people go talk to? So don't make it just an all-inclusive type of team. Like, who wants to be on here? It's not about promotions. It's not about pay. It's not about any of that. Peers, true peers for your team, and the best peers that you're going to get are driven by their heart. They want to take care of their members, and they understand how important the confidentiality piece is. That has to be understood by those that are building the teams. If management gets involved and says, well, no, I think everyone should be allowed to be on the peer team, they're not understanding this program. This is a very, very different program in that it's by the members for the members. So it has to be strong in that and who you select.
And it's important while you're doing this process also that Scott brought up something that just jogged my memory on it. When you're designing your program, you also, if you have existing EAP programs, you really need to know how those EAP programs are run and what that contract with the municipality is. I had one local that reached out to one local member from another job, reached out to their EAP. They had a DUI. They felt that they had an alcohol issue and they wanted to get some treatment. Because there was a criminal piece involved, the DUI piece was involved, they had to notify the chief of the department that they got a DUI. So that immediately killed that breach of confidentiality in that member's mind immediately killed any confidentiality or any member from that job reaching out to that EAP. They just felt that it wasn't confidential to them. You also, when you're talking about education training, how are you going to pick your teams and educate them? You want that as well to be designed before you start really getting into the team. How do you pick your peers? For us, we're small local. I have 200 firefighters. I work with the state association right now, so I'm upwards of about 2,000. But when we first started, it was just my local, and it's 200 members. How was I going to pick those peers that just because they want to do it? Was I going to invite them? Was I going to do a vote by the membership of who they felt was the best candidates, and then ask them if they wanted to be a part of it? So I don't ever want to turn anybody away that wants to be a peer, because I think even if you don't get along with the job on a majority, there's still maybe one person that might code to you for help. And if we can help one person, then it's worth it. So what we did to develop our peer team was say, okay, well, we're going to have 70 hours of education to become a peer team member. You have to complete all 70 hours. And that's a long time. That's like a year's worth of education. And if the member is committed to being a peer, they will attend those. If they're looking to build resumes, they're not going to attend, and they'll fall off the face of the team. They won't be there. So you want to address those issues in setting up the program. And did you have anything else you want to add to that, Scott? Like how you guys set up your team, or how do you pick your peers?
Our peers, we actually have our peers. We put it out there with, it has to be followed by a recommendation, 3 letters of reference. We ask that, we get a letter from a couple of people on the job, but also outside the job. So we do that. We're working to continually build how we get people on the team. A lot of it is for referral based, and we do a lot of background and do some checks with other folks that are involved with that person as well.
So for everybody that's sitting out there watching Scott and I talk, you can see there's a big difference between a smaller local and a larger local, or department and a larger department. We have some locals that are only 12 members, 12 firefighters that work there between fire and EMS. So how do I find peers for that? Maybe it's just the one person. So you can tailor it to what your needs are. I've talked to, when I first got involved in this, I leaned heavily on Frank Lito out of FDNY. He was really the only one that was doing this stuff. And how do you find peers for it? I can never be their I'll never have their CSU unit. Like that's never going to happen. They are an anomaly in the fire service. But if I have a guy that's interested in an department, or if a woman that's interested in an department that wants to run their peer team, and it's only that one person, then that's all you need. So don't get overwhelmed with, well, I'll never be New York, or I'll never be LA County. You can have a peer team. You just have to tailor it to what your resources are. So this next slide is just, did you want to say something, Scott?
No, I think that's good.
Okay, so this next slide is just an example of a mission statement, and I'm just throwing it up there. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but here you can see that we designed what the mission of our membership assistance program was going to be, and it was to basically enhance the members' workplace effectiveness through prevention and identification, resolution of personal productive issues. But then we set our goals. Like, we wanted to create a peer support network that provided referrals for certain types of, we put in here, include but not limited to chemical, alcohol, weight loss, family counseling, post-traumatic stress disorders. But we identified who our target audience is. It's our active firefighters, our retirees, and their families. And we felt it was imperative that we handled retirees as well as our families, because a lot of the referrals, and we'll talk about that a little bit further, but down the line, but a lot of the referrals or the requests for services from us are family oriented. I need help for my daughter. I need help for my father. So we wanted to identify that. And then we wanted to create a crisis response unit, which is very similar to the CISM. But what we're doing is we found that CISM, while it has a place and there's a use for it, psychological first aid for us was more effective. So we wanted to have a crisis response component within the fire department. And then education preventive programs. So we wanted to make sure that whoever takes over this program down the road, they say, all right, well, one of our goals as a peer support program is to educate with preventive education for our members as well, and to do outreach. So these are just examples of what a mission statement could look like. Obviously, you need to tailor them to what works for your job in your department.
Well, here's another thing. When you talk about referral networks, and going back a little bit to what you said, Scott, and the smaller department might be building, utilize who's around you, the existing team members, get involved with, small, large, doesn't matter. Everything that we went through this last year was tough on everybody. And how did we get through it? Even in a department as large as LA County, we learned a lot from a group that we built, our Southern California peer support network that we did on a conference call, and we did it once a week, from San Luis Obispo down to San Diego. We got all the peer coordinators from all these departments, started sharing information. How are we dealing with what's going on? How are your members? What are we doing to take care of our members? What are you seeing? What are the key points right now? That worked out tremendously well, because what we're doing is we're actually building a larger, expanded team. It doesn't just have to be LA County or LA City or San Diego, Santa Barbara County. We have members everywhere, and that network was huge in developing things. And we would have coordinators calling from other departments asking for help on one thing. Someone down in San Diego was able to help Santa Barbara County out. So this is a big piece of this puzzle in building your referral network, not only by other existing teams. If you're a smaller based team, you will get help and resources from that. So I don't know what else you have on referral network. I'll let you kind of hit some of that too, Scott.
Yeah, I think, when Scotty jumped to the slide after this, which really gets into how do you find that information, and just to let everybody know that and Scotty, jump on this if you find something different. But the most common stresses that we're dealing with out there for requests for aid or resources are relationship, family, like children and parents, depression, anxiety, and financial resources. The idea that it's the substance abuse in the fire service. It's the post-traumatic stress disorder in the fire service. While those are high topic right now, they're hot topics right now. They're not the predominant issue. A lot of our stuff is just simple referrals for a clinician, a licensed clinical social worker that wants to, they want to just work on their depression, or they want to work on an anxiety issue. But Scott, well, this is actually, when you're looking at those referrals, it's good as a peer team leader to know, or the peer team itself to be educated on what types of resources out there. And residential, we have residential at the top here, not because this is in any order other than it's the most time away, 21 to 40 nights, 45 overnights. But that's not, I'm sending maybe one or two residential clients every couple months, maybe 6 months. My outpatient, which is at the bottom of the slide, my outpatient, I can refer 2 or 3 a week. So educate yourself to what the different levels of care are: residential, inpatient, partial hospitalization, intensive outpatient. Just be educated to what those are, so you can, when you're talking to your members, you can refer them in the right direction. And then Scott,
Yeah,
on this. Yeah,
we're
Scott.
fortunate in the Southern California area for um, alcohol, substance, PTSD, in residential treatment facilities. We actually have 3 in the Southern California area now, as well as the IFF Center of Excellence. So we have a lot of resources when it comes to that. But again, it's developing that network and who you're using.
Yeah, and the IFF Center of Excellence is a good example of what's available out there, but it's limited to IFF union members, right? So there are other facilities like American Addiction Centers that has first responder based programs that handle police, fire, even veterans, and then there are veterans programs. So you need to connect with these resources and figure out what is able to help your members. I've sent a lot of patients to out of network facilities that have first responder programs, and they do exceptionally well there. But where do you start? Like, how do you start to develop this referral network? The first thing that we did was say, hey, anybody's family member, or clinician, anybody, a licensed clinical social worker. And then we start to cull that information because we're more likely to trust people that are in our field, that are connected to people in our field, than we are outsiders. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, right? We're creating a network of people that are connected to us. So if they're not family members, Scott's met him or met her, and he's vetted her. So that a member that's in crisis isn't grabbing a phone book and saying, let me just try the A, and I'm going to go with this person. All right. So when you, and you can contact your EAPs. If you have an EAP that you work with, who are they using? They're a very good resource if you have a very good EAP. And there's a lot of good EAPs out there. Luckily, Scott and I both teach for the International Association of Firefighters, the peer support program. So we get to travel the country and meet different peer programs that are developing. And we get to see what's happening in those communities. While my EAP was terrible and a faceless 1-800 number, there are other EAPs that are very reactive and helpful to those locals.
Yeah, it really is all over the place. And again, when we start talking about this referral network and it's such a key part of this whole developing your program. There's all kinds of services out there. I will just tell you that internally, and luckily we have a guy within our department that is very tech savvy. He was able to build an app for us in our department on the phone called Firewire, and it's pretty amazing. Now, again, collaboratively with CAL FIRE, other trusted peer teams up and down our state, we have started to vet clinicians all up and down the state. And in this app that one of our firefighters built, we have find a clinician. You just punch in a zip code and it'll tell you no matter where you are, San Francisco, Oakland, San Diego, LA County, you'll find a clinician that has been vetted by 4 or so of our teams that have vetted these clinicians. Exactly what Scott's saying is that trusted someone's been there. A firefighter's been there and said, you know what, this worked really, really well for me. We continue to vet that out and we put it on our app. So and we're expanding that. So it's something that we have within our department that a firefighter built. We just found him within our department, a very tech savvy guy, but it's been a huge referral network because we pass that information around freely.
And, for me, I'm still on apparatus. I'm a lieutenant on an engine company, so I don't have time to go out and meet clinicians all the time. And I have my hands in a lot of different pots. So what I decided to do was work with a couple of the communities. There were 3 locals at the time that had peer support programs. The 3 of us got together and we created an educational opportunity that provided CEs or continuing education for licensed clinical social workers, where we would invite them to do a fire department, a cultural competency class on what the fire department was like. So it was really easy for us because all we're doing is talking about our jobs and how they operate and the lingo that we use and the personalities that we run into. But at the same time, I get to meet 30 to 60 clinicians at one seating where I can get a first impression and then build resources from there. It educates them about our job. It educates them about what we're doing as peer support. And it also allows us to meet them and find out where they stand in it, because you don't want to work with clinicians that don't believe in peer support. And I think you're going to have a really difficult time finding somebody that doesn't, but there are some. Another opportunity is when you leave this and you're like, oh, wow, like, where do I go from here? And I got, Johnny just called me or texted me and he needs help. You have two opportunities as well. You can contact samhsa.gov, samhsa.gov. And you can, very similar to what Scott was saying, it has a list, you put your zip code in there, and then you have check boxes that you can, pick and choose those checks that meet that person's needs. Are they, do they have a depression issue? Is it borderline personality disorder? Do they have Blue Cross? Do they have United, Cigna? Do you want to be in a 5-mile radius? Do you want to be in a 50-mile radius? You can put all that in, and then you'll get a listing of clinicians that are in that area. And then you can at least provide some resources to the member, even if you haven't, vetted them. The other opportunity is Psychology Today. Real simple. You jump on there, you throw some information in there about location, and then they shoot you a list of clinicians that are in that area. In the beginning, I'd be very leery about doing that if I didn't know what I was looking for, but I'm fairly confident in what I'm looking for in clinicians, so I can read their bios and what they're practicing to say, let me try this one. If I don't have somebody that's available that I use, that I vetted, I can say, well, this person sounds like they're going to be what I'm looking for, so let me send this one. And usually I send about 3 referrals for anybody that's asking for a resource. I send them 3 and let them choose which one they want. I don't pick for them. And then we want to get into conducting outreach. Once we've got our peer team built and our structures all set, and then we started building our network, now we have to reach out. And who needs to know these things, right? We want to conduct outreach with our firefighters and educate them about one of our program or our program resources that we found. We want to educate our fire chiefs and our administrations about what we're doing. We want buy-in from them as well. We reach out to our retirees, family members. We do a recruit family night. So every recruit class, we have all the families come in. We tend to not have the children come, just because we get into some heavy topics, especially when it comes to PTSD and what our members may see and experience and how they may react. But we want our spouses to know who we are, what our faces look like, how to contact us, and that there's resources out there. And then, as well as our EAPs, want to let them know what we're doing. In our training centers, if there's a new program that we have, we want to give it to our training facility and let them put it out there, maybe as part of an EMS behavioral health component for our recertifications.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things in what you were just saying, Scotty, about letting people know. And again, going back to, where we're starting, right out of the recruit academy. A lot of the departments that I deal with are doing that. We have, even within our department, every recruit class, every tower that we put through, they get a portion on behavioral health from our peer members. We talked and let our firefighters know. We talked to our fire chiefs. The one subject, the retirees, I'll tell you, there's a, and again, as many of us do, we reach out to Frank Lito, and Frank Lito in New York really taught me something about the retiree program. And as many retirees as they have within their peer support program, we have continued to build our retiree program, and it's taken off tremendously. I think our retirees, because the one thing that we know about retirees is that basically it's that happy divorce. Like, we love you, but we can't stay here, and off they go. What we have done with our retiree peers is we actually preload them. We have we know who's coming up for retirement. We attach a retiree peer. We have them walk them through the last 6 months of their job, 30 plus years, whatever, and walk them through that first year and where they're going into retirement. So I think it's a really important piece, bringing in the retirees, because they also get to be still part of your team. So and they're retired, they're available. So utilize them.
And that's really great. So when we do our education, the goal for our educating, when we first started our program, was to educate our peers so that as they retire and retire out, I'll have retired peers. So it's really important. And now I have several retired peers that still, like, we just went to the line of duty death in New Haven to express our condolences to the brothers and sisters out there and the family. And we had retirees in dress blues from the peer team come out with us. They weren't asked to come out. They just wanted to, so it keeps them connected to the job, and that's a huge benefit. So what type of outreach? It's not one-time event. It's not, hey, listen, we got a new program. This is it. Good luck, and we'll see you at the end of your career. It's station visits on a regular basis that provide information. Maybe we found a new resource for or education on alcohol and substance use disorder. Maybe we found a new treatment out there, or we're working with a DBT client. What's DBT? We might do just an informational sit down with our members to let them know what's happening out there. One of the biggest reach outs that we have is reaching out after potentially traumatic events. And over the last several years, we've moved critical incidents to potentially traumatic events, because it's not critical for everybody. So, I might get a phone call from the deputy that's in charge of the shift of the platoon, or I might get a call from the officer or the truck. Lately, as this program has built over the years, I even get guys that are working somewhere else in the city say, hey, I just want to let you know the Rescue 1 and Engine 1 are just working off a pediatric code and it doesn't sound good. So when those members come back to the station, two of our peers are sitting there to talk about education and information, not to rehash the incident, but to provide them information on what may or may not happen with them physically, behaviorally, psychologically. We're there for 15, 20 minutes, or as long as they want us there. But on the average, probably about a 20-minute stay. And that has worked really well with our members to build support for the program and to feel like they're cared about and touched.
Very good.
So how about educating our team members? Now, several years ago when we started putting these programs together, I started looking at, it's really like hazardous materials training. There's the operations or awareness types of classes, and then there's the technician level for our peer support members, where we have specific training that we might want to focus on for members in crisis. So on the operations level of it, it's, we provide education on behavioral health and wellness, substance use disorders in the fire service, what a peer support program design is, something similar to this, but it would be over a couple days where we really dig into the weeds of it. We talk about legal issues in peer support, and we talk about self-care. So you can see there's like a really broad awareness level education. And then we start to dig into the technician piece of it, like the bullseye, if you will, where we might do constructive confrontation, suicide prevention, postvention. We do the psychological first aid. We do motivational interviewing as a great class when you get your peer teams up and running. It's an unbelievable class on how to get our members in crisis to give us the solutions, because they have the solutions. It's our job to figure out what's going on and to get them to figure it out and to see it through the emotional crisis that they're in. I like to say that our brain is like a seesaw. You got emotions on one side and cognitive thinking on the other. And when we're in crisis, our emotions are way up here. And our job as peer support members is to try to level that playing field and get us a little bit more cognitive, so we can control our emotions and think about what we need to do in the moment to get stable. And that's our job.
Yep.
And where do we find these sources of education? Right, we have the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. This is the second year they put this program on. I think it's great. I can't believe I heard that there's 2,100 participants. That's amazing to me. And I'm sorry you all out there have to listen to me drop my R's and not understand a word I'm saying probably. But so you have the resources of the NFFF, right? And for the members that are part of the IFF, we have the IFF Behavioral Health Division, the Occupational Health and Safety Division, and there's Behavioral Health Division under that. which was a great resource for me. We've had, in the last 3 years, we've had 3 suicides on my job alone. And in the state, in the last 3 years, we've had 6. So to get the resources for suicide and how to respond to suicides was immense from the IFF. I had a great response from them. So there's a lot of resources out there that you can cull and you can bring back to your department, and not just with the IFF, but with the National Fallen Firefighters as well. You have behavioral health clinicians that we have that we're connected with. Local clinicians and facilities. Look for your state behavioral health portals. Rhode Island has the Behavioral Health and Human Services office. What do you guys have in California, Scott?
Well, just to go along with that too, is that when you talk about going through suicides, is that, we have the National Suicide Hotline. But here on the West Coast, and locally in LA, we have Dee Hirsch Suicide Prevention. They will go out and do educational pieces on suicide. When you start looking for those kind of things, that's where you go. Try to find out who is willing to come out and talk about that stuff. Subject matter experts like Dee Hirsch, that's all they deal with, right? They can provide that education and training on a subject like that. You just have to dig in a little bit around your local resources.
Yeah, and so that's a really good point, that there's a lot of 1-800 number resources out there. Just do your due diligence before you start posting them in the stations to make sure that they're competent people on the other line. There's a lot of people that want to do good, and I don't fault them for it, but some of them out there are just doing good without certifications behind them. So make sure you look into what's going on out there. And the same thing with instructors. Since behavioral health has really kind of blown up since probably 2006, that I've noticed, at least, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, all of a sudden there's a ton of instructors that are out there. So just do your due diligence on who you're bringing in to talk.
Yeah, Scotty, I want to just kind of touch on that for a second, because you're absolutely right, and I caution everyone out there, administrators, people that are going to put stuff together, do some homework. Trust your subject matter experts, the people that are out on the ground. Talk to departments that have peers. Look into these things, because unfortunately, opportunistic people, we've found them. Okay, I've had peer teams call me from certain West Coast states that said, "Hey, this company called us up and said, we do everything. We'll manage your peer support team. We'll do all education and training." Bottom line, no involvement, no cultural competency. It's, you just be cautious of what you're putting out. Be careful of the money that you're spending, because there's a lot of value in putting that money into your own peer support team and let them do the work, as opposed to someone coming out from an outside agency that's going to overtake your program or say that they'll run your program. Not saying there isn't some good ones out there, and you will find them, but do your due diligence and make sure that you're not just getting companies that are startup companies that, listen, the whole thing behind this, and Scotty and I know, because we traveled across the country through the IFF, we see that this behavioral health for our firefighters and first responders out there is a big movement, and rightly so. But like with anything, there's going to be people that are going to jump on the gravy train right now and know that there's money to be made for these departments that are looking for something. And when you don't know, don't just jump into something. Do your homework to find out that you're getting someone worth, their cost.
And that really leads into this slide of making sure that they're worth their cost, but also thinking outside the box when it comes to finding education and resources. There's not a lot of money that we didn't have any money when we started our program back in 2006. So what we did was we reached out to those facilities that want our business. They want our dollars. Those substance use disorder residential facilities, that are making on average $1,000 a day from healthcare for members that go in. They want that dollar, but they also want to do good. I'm not saying they don't want to do good, but they're willing to send clinicians out there to teach for you So look for local clinicians that you want to work with, licensed clinical social workers that are educated in post-traumatic stress. Bring them in to teach your peer team about the topics that you're interested in. Also maintain a span of control on your team. This is really important. Not everybody you can't, as the team leader, you can't always have the phone and answer the phone calls, because I guarantee you they're coming on your kid's birthday, when you're on vacation, just when you get home from a shift. So you need to share the wealth a little bit. Give the phone to somebody else. I'm still on the trucks. So there's also that piece, maintaining your job, or for me, the computer, is representative of the documentation that we want, the quality assurance that we're doing. And you have your family still. This can become very overwhelming, becoming a peer team leader, but even a peer alone. They become very overwhelming and take over everything. And your family is one of the most, it's the most important thing that's going to keep you grounded while you're going through this. Trainings and workshops, you want to reach out for more education, and then you want, to bring in your fire administration and let them know what you're doing. Maybe not who you're working with. Obviously, you want to keep that confidential, but you want to let them know this is what's happening out there, so that there's buy-in. And then when I talked about the quality assurance, you want to, as a team, you want to sit down either monthly, quarterly, or biannually, depending on how big the team is and how often you're working, and go over the maybe some of the difficult calls that you've had, because as a team, you're all going to respond. Just because it's a substance use disorder issue or a depression issue, not every depression crisis is the same, and they're going to be treated differently. So it's really good as a team to sit down and say, listen, I had this call out. This is what happened, and learn from each other. All right. I put in here after actions and lessons learned. Like, we have that because we identify with it as firefighters. But it's about learning about the calls that we respond to for our members, the unique ones, because some of them will go down a weird road before it's all over, and it's good to educate the other team members.
Well, this piece right here, and considering a behavioral health team clinician, we're fortunate with our department. I will tell you that it didn't come easy to get a full-time clinician, but we actually now have a full-time behavioral health clinician for our department. Just kind of goes without saying, 3,200 members. Yeah, we need a full-time clinician. If you don't have one, consider it. Shared cost. We have teams that are using one clinician for several different agencies, but getting to know who that person is and making it work, and then their clinical oversight for your peer support team.
Yeah, for us, we don't have the money for a behavioral health team clinician, so we don't have one designated. But what I do is have great relationship with several very good clinicians that I can call at any time and bounce things off of. So it really is depending on building that relationship and the resources that you have. Educate yourself on building boundaries and when to say no. I was working with a group on a line of duty death, and it was terrible because I was going on vacation, and I did not want to leave. Like, I was going to cancel my vacation so that I was in constant contact with this department, because I didn't want to leave them hanging. But I have to trust that the members that I'm working with, they're just as educated, and they're just as knowledgeable, and they're just as caring, and they can pick up from where I left off. And it was a very hard thing to do for me to leave, because it's just who I am. But I did it. And so knowing when to say no, and by the way, that was since 2006 to now, I just figured out how to do it. So it's really tough to do, especially when you want your program to do well. You don't ever want to say no. You want to make sure everybody gets what they need. But saying no,
again, Scott, that's resourcing your folks, right? And trusting your team, the people that you have on it. Get to know, there's a lot of work to be done within these peer support programs. But those that you have, your peer support members, check in on them. Make sure they're doing okay. That bouncing back, I can tell you, just like Scott, being involved as he is out there, I'm pretty involved with our department. I have about 4 or 5 clinicians that I work very closely with, and now we have actually a full-time mental health. People often ask, how do you keep going from one thing to the next and dealing with this? And well, I have clinicians that know, right? Whether I'm going out on an incident, they'll check in with me. You have those parameters set, and your peer support members. If someone's been going on something over and over, make sure you're checking in on them. Make sure that they know. They might have had a personal issue going on. They might have had a suicide in the family. Is it the right time to send them on those kind of incidents? Just set those boundaries, know your team. Within your peer team, get to know your peers. And I would say that's probably a biggest part of, one of the biggest problems or, things that you can do as a coordinator with your team is to know your team, know that they are mentally okay to do the work that they're going to do out there.
So I just want to say, for me, it's an honor to sit at this desk and and talk virtually to all of you. But to be honored to be asked to do this by the National Fallen Firefighters, I really appreciate being asked again. They have a great organization with a real heart to do what they're doing with the symposium. And I thank you all that are interested in doing peer support. I hope you learned something from this. I know it's only 45 minutes and it really touches on it, and we could really get into the weeds. But to thank you guys for stepping up and doing this so that I can finally go on vacation. And you can take over the peer support stuff.
I think we might have some time for some question and answer.
I'm gonna
right. Do we have some questions?
I'm gonna unshare this.
Okay. Hey, Scott, Frank Lito here.
Yeah.
So first of all, excellent presentation. People out in the audience, you got the opportunity to be with two of the best in the business. Not only colleagues, but dear friends of ours, and dear friends of those in the first responder community, in Scott Robinson and Scott Ross. So excellent presentation. There are a couple of questions. I'm just going to give them to you. The first question was the number of peers on a team. Is it a fixed number of peers? How do you decide the number of peers?
I think that's a great question. Well, that's a great question because it's a scary question to answer, right? Like I'll tell you this. I remember sitting with Frank and Drew in Boston, meeting them, and talking about what we were doing in Cranston, and saying, well, you know what, out of 200 members, I've got 7 members that started our peer team. And I remember Frank saying, I don't know if you remember this, Frank, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if pre 9/11, you guys had 14 peers.
Yeah, maybe 14 or 15 peers. So.
Yeah. So, you think about that, New York had 14,000 firefighters, and pre 9/11, they had 14 peers. And then they blew up to what they were doing, like what they're doing now. So for me, you can have too many peers that they're not getting enough touches or connections with people in crisis, but you can never have too many peers that want to do it. So it really depends on your job, your funding, and where you want to keep it.
I would say, Scott, if we could, maybe kind of a basic rule of thumb is look at 10%. Seems like an adequate number. Now, for New York, 10%, that I don't know. Maybe they have that many peers. I don't know. But, take a department of 100, or 200. You have 10 to 20 peers. That makes sense. I think it's a pretty good rule of thumb.
I like
with
that.
3,200 that we have, we're only at 5%, having 150 peers. I will tell you, 150 peers seems like a lot, but geographically, it's not. When we're spread out and just having peers on the ground, having ears to the ground in the stations and kind of connected to folks is really important. So again, like I said, best way to answer that question for me is kind of a 10% of your department size as a rule of thumb.
Yeah, I like that. And right now, I think after we've been there since 2006, we have about 15 peers. but I've also bolstered our peer support program as going to the state level, where we have about 100 peers at the state level, so I can supplement my peers if they're not available with other members that are trained the same way. So
another question that came out, and this is a really good question, I've heard it many times, peer support seems to work really well with the rank and file of fire and EMS. How about peer support for chief officers? How do you deal with peer support for the chief or for chief officers?
Well, I'll take that, Frank, because there's something that I heard on day one when you were presenting. There is that level, right? I mean, there's rank and file, but there's also a different stress level for administration, executive team, deputy chief, assistant chiefs, and fire chiefs of departments. We had an incident the other day that involved an upper level chief. There was a really significant call out that we're trying to assist with. Those stress levels are very different from those on the ground, and our peers, handle those things in the field. But we build also and have battalion chiefs. And we've had assistant chiefs in as peers, because it is what it is, right? Peer to peer. You are going to have chiefs get on your peer team to address those chiefs and those kind of levels that's going on there. So I think we say there's no rank in the peer support, and there really shouldn't be, but we have all different levels. We have our firefighters, our firefighter medics, captains, chiefs, assistant chiefs, all on a team, and they all serve a place. The chiefs can talk to chiefs, and so on.
yeah, and I'll just say, as a smaller local or a smaller job, and I know there are ones that the majority are probably in the 40 to 50 paid departments, 40 to 50 member range. That gets really tough, because you can't have an officer, a chief, a private, because you're just running out. You don't have the manpower to do to do that. So and Scott's right. Rank shouldn't have any say in peer support, but seniority tends to. And so, I'll have members that'll reach out that are junior that want to be parts of the peers team, and then I'll get senior guys going saying, "Who the hell's that guy? He's only got 3 years on the job. Well, he's going to be a peer support person." Yeah, well, he can work with the junior guys, just like I can have senior members that'll be peer support that may not identify with our younger members and our junior members, but they identify with our senior members. So seniority plays a little bit, and we love that cross section, that dichotomy of peer team members across the job. But they absolutely need to be taken care of. They need to be reached out.
So an incident happened in your state while this presentation was on, Scott, Ross, a mass shooting in San Jose, I believe. Let me just make sure before I say something. In San Jose, California, a rail yard, 8 people were killed. So prayers out to those victims and their families. But also, you were thinking about, Scott Robinson mentioned a potentially traumatic event. So we know that first responders, right now in Northern California are responding, have responded to this terrible event. How do you, as a peer team, deal with such a critical event in its own department when everyone in the department has been affected?
If I can, let me start. So I was down at Waltz, the affiliate leadership training conference down in Florida one year, the last one we had, and we had a chemical fire in my city, and 14 firefighters went down. One of them critical. I flew back that night. The majority of my job was involved with that fire, whether it was called back on overtime to fill stations, or they were at the fire. And I'm compromised because these are friends of mine that I've grown up with in the fire service. So I was lucky enough that we have built this robust peer support network throughout the state that I was able to call in peers from surrounding communities. And I'll tell you, it was the first time that I had to do it on that level. And I was really worried that my guys would sit there and go, I don't want to talk to this guy from this community. Like, who are they? Like, I don't want to talk to them. But our firefighters loved it. Like, they were so impressed by the support from the firefighters that were peers from other communities to come in, that I got a really positive response from. So I lean on other peer teams when it's such a big issue like that. And retirees, you can use your retirees too if you have them.
So just before you go, Scott, I just want to let you know that this has a hard ending at 3 p.m. So we have a couple of minutes if you want to just answer, or if you have an answer for that, and just to also if you have any concluding remarks.
Yeah, I agree with Scott. And listen, when it happens within your own department, be humble enough to allow other teams to come in. It's not the time to try to deal with something very heavy and putting your, wheels in motion. Because they're coming with their heart. They're going to take care of your team. You'll pick it up from the end. It's hard as firefighters. We all think we got it. Even on the peer support level, I've heard it time and time again. Hey, we got a peer team. We can handle it. I'm going to just tell you best practices and things that we've learned through many responses around the country is, be humble enough to let another peer team come in and help you. They want to, and it works out well. So, and I'll just have I'll close my comment and turn it back to Scott, but thank you again for letting me be on. For all those that are looking to develop peer support teams, good luck. Take the time to invest, and it is for your members. So you're doing a really good thing.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, guys, and thank you. A lot of chats coming, complimenting the presentation. All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you all.